Tucker Carlson and neocon John Bolton had a debate on Fox News. This is from a few weeks ago. But since then, John Bolton has become one of Trump's top foreign policy advisors. So this interview really becomes all the more important and insightful. So let's watch, and then we'll come back and discuss.
Ambassador John Bolton, a frequent fixture here on Fox, was at the White House yesterday for a personal meeting with the President of the United States. News reports, a lot of them suggest he could be the next national security advisor. So the following question is more relevant than ever. What does Ambassador Bolton think is the greatest threat to America today? Ambassador Bolton joins us tonight. Great to see you, Ambassador.
Glad to be here.
So it feels like we're moving kind of in slow motion toward a conflict with Iran and Russia in Syria. Do you think we are?
Well, I think that's one possibility. I think the Iranians have clearly gamed what they plan to do after the defeat of the ISIS territorial caliphate.
Yes.
I think they were thinking of it when our strategists were not thinking of it, and we're now suffering the consequences with Iran literally on Israel's border, flying drones into Israeli airspace. I don't think that's the really most dangerous aspect of the Middle East, though. I still think it's Iran's support for terrorism and its continued effort to get deliverable nuclear weapons.
Right. So obviously Iran was greatly empowered by the fall of Saddam. I think in retrospect we can concede that. There haven't been any Iran-sponsored terror attacks in this country that I'm aware of in the last 25 years. There have, of course, been many, many, many sponsored by Saudi Arabians and the Gulf states and the Sunni Arab world. So why should we see Iran as our primary threat?
Because Iran, for many decades, has been the world's central banker of international terrorism, funding Shia, Sunni terrorists on an equal opportunity basis, providing arms to them, as they do to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So it's their support for terrorism generally that should concern us, not necessarily specific attacks in the United States.
But, I mean, in order to, commit American troops and the billions it takes to prosecute any kind of conflict, wouldn't you want to go after the people who are attacking us here first?
Yeah. Well, nobody's talking about committing massive amounts of troops. What we have to worry about, I think, most importantly, is the threat of North Korea's nuclear weapons program, which is more advanced than Iran's. But it all ties together in the Middle East. You may have seen reports recently of a UN inspector's study of North Korea selling chemical weapons, precursor chemicals, and equipment to manufacture chemical weapons to Syria,
right,
likely financed by Iran. So there's a palpable threat of weapons of mass destruction, something President Trump acted against earlier in his term, that the North Koreans have brought into the Middle East with Iran's participation.
I believe that they're all bad places. Though in 2015 you wrote a piece for the New York Times saying we ought to bomb Iran in order to stop their weapons program.
That's not quite what I said. That's what the New York Times headlines said.
Right. Well, that's how I read it anyway.
And as you know, they write the headlines and the op-ed writer.
Right. But I don't think that's the only time you call for conflict, armed conflict with Iran. But if we had done that then, where do you think we'd be now?
Well, I think Israel could have done it 15 years before, and we'd be in a much better place, as Israel itself and the United States are in a better place today for Israel having bombed Saddam Hussein's nuclear reactor in 1981, and for Israel having bombed the reactor that North Korea was building in Syria in September of 2007.
So you've called for regime change in Iraq, Libya, Iran, and Syria. In the first two countries, we've had regime change, and obviously it's been, I'd say, a disaster. I think we agree.
No, I don't agree with that. And let me. You
don't think it's been a disaster?
No, because to argue that, you have to argue. Let's just take Iraq to begin with. You have to argue that everything that followed from the fall of Saddam Hussein followed inevitably, solely, and unalterably from the decision to overthrow him. And that's simply not true.
I would never argue that. I'm merely arguing the macro picture,
since
you just said that Iran is the single greatest threat to us and to that region. I think you'll concede that Saddam was the greatest counterbalance to Iran, and they were empowered by his fall. So I think it's fair to say if you think Iran is the real threat that way, it's kind of hard to defend that decision, right?
No, because I think your analysis is simple-minded, frankly.
Okay.
The Iranian threat, which stems from the revolution of 1979, was underway quite apart from what Saddam Hussein was doing. The Iranians have been trying to get nuclear weapons for 25 years.
So you don't think the fall of Saddam made Iran stronger?
I think it made the fall of Saddam, no, did not make Iran stronger. What made Iran stronger ultimately was the withdrawal of American forces in 2011.
So if you, I mean, I'm not saying you're the only person who thinks that. You're the only person I have met who thinks that. What would you say if you could sum up the one lesson from what has happened in Iraq? What would it be?
Well, I think the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, that military action, was a resounding success. I think the mistakes that were made subsequently, setting up the Coalition Provisional Authority and others that followed from it, are lessons about what to do after a regime is overthrown. But I'd also point out, because of President Bush's surge policy, when his administration ended, stability had returned to Iraq. It was not a place you'd go for vacation.
Right.
But he turned it over to Barack Obama, and it fell apart subsequently. And the point I think you need to understand is that life is complicated in the Middle East. And when you say, well, the overthrow of Saddam Hussein was a mistake, is simplistic.
I would argue that I'm the one who understands how complicated it is, but just my view.
It's your long experience in foreign policy, I know.
Better record than yours, I would say. But thank you, Ambassador. Good to see you.
Oh, man, that ending. Oh, that ending. John Bolton's like, yeah, it's your long experience in foreign policy, huh, Tucker? And Tucker's like, oh, my record's better than yours, bitch. Okay, so, first of all, oh, you motherfuckers are going to make me defend Tucker Carlson? It hurts. It pains me to do this, but I have to do it because he's right and John Bolton is wrong. So, let's break this down. When he says Iran is the -- state sponsor of terrorism, there's no other way to describe that but preposterously wrong. And Tucker Carlson accurately points out, name the Shia suicide bombers against us. Name the Shia terrorists who've attacked here. And then he rightly points out again that it's really the Salafi militants who are the problem. It's really the ultra right-wing Sunni militants who are an issue. And Bolton just kind of fucking swipes that to the side and acts like that's not true. That's clearly the case. I mean, what is it? 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 or 16 of the 19 hijackers are from Saudi Arabia. They are the ones spreading radical fundamentalist ideology, Salafism, Wahhabism all around the world by exporting their extreme interpretation of Islam and building mosques all over the place. And then they have the nerve to try to argue that the problem is Iran and the problem are the Shias, who are the counterbalance to fundamentalist Sunni supremacy. So it's just, come on, man. It's just so disingenuous and such bullshit. And then he talks about how, well, the big problem is their nuclear development. Well, then I guess you better thank Obama for that. Now, shouldn't you? Now, I've been super critical of Obama. That's clear. Everybody knows that. But at the same time, there are some things he deserves credit for. The Iran deal was one of those things. It's a deal that says, hey, we're going to have the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, regulate and check Iran's nuclear program all the time and make sure they only enrich for power for their power grid and for research purposes. And then in return, all you have to do is give Iran back their own money. So it does prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. There's no doubt about it. But we've repeatedly violated the nuclear deal now, and John Bolton wants to totally get out of the nuclear deal, and they're probably about to do that, by the way. That's all the reports that in May Trump's going to pull out of the nuclear deal, which makes it way more likely they will get a nuclear weapon. So if you're concerned about Iran nuclear development, then you should get your ass out of the White House, and you should get Donald Trump's ass out of the White House, and you should have somebody in there who believes in preserving the Iran nuclear deal, because that guarantees they don't create a nuclear weapon. When you blow up the diplomacy, that'll make it so they do get a weapon. And then he goes on a bullshit, totally made up argument of, oh, we have evidence of North Korea selling weapons to Syria, and then Syria might sell it to Iran. Just like, Colin Powell and he was one of the key people who pushed for the argument that Saddam was connected to Osama bin Laden and Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, he always argued, no, we got to do regime change because Saddam, oh my God, Saddam and the weapons and Saddam and 9/11 and Saddam and Al-Qaeda, we got to do. Look at all the evidence, oh my God, yellow cake, we have yellow cake, oh my God, look, Colin Powell, oh my God, there he is at UN holding up a vial. He's holding a vial, we have to take him seriously, okay, sorry, we got to act. So this guy who has zero credibility about anything is now the one who's stepping forward and going, oh, well, North Korea's selling weapons to Syria. Totally made up. And then, by the way, even if that were, let's say for a second that's true. Are they doing that because they're about to launch a preemptive strike against Oklahoma? No. So then what the fuck why are you like, we gotta act? And make no mistake about it, John Bolton wants to be more involved in Syria. John Bolton wants to be more involved in Iraq. John Bolton wants to start new wars with North Korea and Iran. So he's never met a war he didn't like. And as he's accusing Tucker Carlson of having a simple-minded explanation, there's never been somebody with a simpler mind than John Bolton, because it doesn't matter what the problem is in question. The answer is more U.S. military. He's going to accuse anybody of being simple-minded. Are you kidding me? Your answer is always the same. And this is why I say neoconservatism and American exceptionalism manifests as a fundamentalist religion. Because neoconservatism and American exceptionalism, it really is imperialism and American supremacy. So he thinks we're better than everybody. We should be the only superpower in the world. We should control everything that's happening around the world. And we're right and good by definition. So only when you have that kind of warped mindset, that fundamentalist mindset, can you rationalize and justify, as he's doing, an offensive invasion against a country that didn't attack us. They killed minimum 200,000 civilians. And by the way, we tortured on top of it. And we're still there today. So this guy is as extreme as it gets. He's the worst of the neocons. I was joking about it the other day on Twitter. I said, John Bolton makes George W. Bush look like Noam Chomsky. And so then Tucker Carlson rightly points out Iraq and Libya, regime change was terrible there. And Bolton disagrees. Like, no, it's there's now literally slave markets in Libya. Slavery has returned to Libya. Now, I'm no fan of Gaddafi, and I'm sure everybody listening here is not a fan of Gaddafi. But you know what else I'm not a fan of? Slave markets. And perhaps if we just minded our own fucking business and didn't get involved in Libya, it'd be a more stable country today, and you wouldn't have ISIS proliferation in Libya as you do right now, and you wouldn't have fucking slave markets as you do right now. And oh yeah, on top of that, again, we're talking about an offensive bombing of a country that didn't attack us, which is a violation of international law. So we violated international law in the process, and we fucked up the country even further than it was fucked up in the first place. But no, Libya invasion's good. The Iraq invasion's good. Forget the minimum 200,000 dead civilians. It's better now because it's better that Saddam's gone. And then this is how you know John Bolton, just his view of the world is just factually wrong, is that when Tucker Carlson points out, hey man, you're so against Iran, why were you in favor of the Iraq war then? Because if you're so against Iran, you can't be in favor of the Iraq war because Saddam was the counterbalance to Iran in the region. So when you toppled Saddam, and then by the way, after Saddam, what happened? Saddam was a Sunni leader. They put a Shia leader in place. The U.S. did. So you're so against Iran and, you're so scared of Shia dominance of the region, then why did you topple the Sunni counterbalance in the region and put a Shia government in place which then in turn aligned with Iran? And he's like, no, that didn't happen. And Tucker Carlson's like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And then he argues, well, no, the problem was that we pulled out in the first place. We're still in Iraq today. Okay, so we took a little fucking few months break when we temporarily drew down and then we went back in there. Again, I told you, his answer is always the same. More war, more U.S. militarism, more occupation. And so, in other words, his answer is, fuck everything up and then stay there forever. Really, John Bolton? And then what about the fact that our fucking infrastructure gets a grade of D+? How are we going to pay for that, huh? How are we going to pay for that? How are we going to pay for the fact that half of workers in America make $30,000 a year or less, and we've had middle-class wages stagnating since the 1980s. But you want to take our hard-earned tax dollars, you want to take money of regular people, and then ship it to be overseas so that we can fucking dominate and control the world when nobody asked for that. Nobody in Kentucky's like, wow, I really think the next move that we should make is we should invade Somalia and set up a fucking military base there and micromanage their lives. So, listen, we're in trouble. We're in trouble because John Bolton is, he's as bad as it gets. He's as right-wing as it gets. He's as ultra-hawkish as it gets. And even a guy like Tucker Carlson, who's very right-wing, on issues of foreign policy, he's more of a paleo-conservative than a neoconservative. He's a throwback to the days when, people on the right said, I actually believe in small government in the sense that I don't even want to have a big military. Like, I want to have a smaller government in that sense, too. So, Tucker Carlson's right on this, and John Bolton is dead wrong, and he's so extreme that even other neocons, and I know Tucker Carlson's not a neocon, so I'm not referring to him, but even other neocons look at John Bolton like, damn, son, he's a little out there. Because he does want to bomb Iran, he wants to bomb North Korea, he's never met a war he didn't like, and now he has the ear of the empty-minded, easily persuadable idiot president. Watch out.